Welcome back to Hour 3 on Friday, and it's a special hour. Our preparedness, civil defense, earth changes, space weather, martial law, and, of course, the emerging plagues. Weather update panel, John Moore, who's on Mondays with us, and, of course, his website is thelibertyman.com. He co-hosts with Ann Morrison, his scientist, and an expert on volcanism, earthquakes, UV light, earth changes, plagues such as Ebola, H7N9, etc., her science areas of expertise. Methane hydrate surges occurring around the planet. What are the latest news? First, John, what's happening? Any news on the report we talked about on Monday, but the emerging danger of EMP attacks against America?
All right. Well, I just got an update from our private source just 2 hours ago that EMP is still very high on the list of things that the government and private contractors involved with the government are very concerned about. In addition, I was told that, we've heard about these 3-person FEMA coffins now for 3 or 4 years, and various numbers being given out. But my private source says double what we thought was the number of 3-person coffins. Now, this source is saying they expect that in the next 12 months, between now and May of 2015, something really serious is going to happen. I know you've been prognosticating that yourself, Doctor. Yeah. Personally, I live each day as if it's the last day. Myself.
Right, you have to. That's a good approach. I tend to kind of put that kind of prepper approach on top with what I call variable icing of intuitive knowledge, research, and prognostication, and then occasionally I'll have what I call a prophetic word to say, this isn't Deagle's opinion, this is thus saith the Lord. I'm going to tell you right now, having visited 1997, March 16th, with the HLI board in Zurich, Switzerland, we are going to have a plague, and it will strike us probably in the next year to year and a half. That plague will shut down society for a minimum of 6 to 10 weeks, result in martial law, result in the bank holiday, the disappearance of the so-called net neutrality issue, the evaluation of the currency, result in total social chaos, with foreign troops on American soil, the deployment of not only drones in the airspace over America, but also robot warriors, just like the movie Captain America, where they were actually staged on the streets of Tehran. And people say, no, Dr. Deagle, you're delusional, you're this and that. Like, I wish. I mean, if I was crazy, I would like it, because I've been analyzing these things. I've been exposed to it firsthand as a civilian doctor working with military for close to 4 decades now. I can tell you, with the contacts and the information I have, all of the chambers are being loaded up for some very bad things to happen. And even if something just as simple as an EMP attack took out the power grid, or an airborne plague, but a combination thereof is going to be absolutely mind-boggling. And I tell people you can prep and survive this, but if you're not prepping at all, and you're kind of wishing on a star, like that Disney song, wishing on a star, right, you're going to really be in a state of shock. And it says in the Bible that those who do not prepare or take care of their family are worse than an infidel, which means you're pretty stupid if God's going to tell you that you should be a prepper. So that's God's word. He's also an environmentalist too, by the way. So John, what would you tell people to do about power needs and about general prepping?
Well, they have backups on the backups on the backups. Having hot and cold running water at 40 pounds pressure is my way of saying I'm in civilization when I have that, because when I don't have it, I'm not in civilization. I don't have to guess what it's like to take a bath out of an M1 steel helmet. It's a very well-known quantity to me, and I will avoid that if at all possible. So,
you're a funny guy.
But I'll do it. I'll stay clean. If being clean is not optional either. And if being clean means taking a bath out of an M1 steel pot helmet, I will do that. But I'd rather have access to hot and cold shower, running water. Right. Now, I have neighbors out here in the Ozarks who don't have hot and cold running water, even cold running water, as far as that goes. Right. There's still many, many people who live that way. Some by choice, some because lack of funds. So I'm putting into place the necessary equipment to be off the grid and still have some of the basics of civilization, be able to take a hot shower, have a fan, a few lights, my communications equipment, and have it all up, running and tested, and then disconnected so that when the EMP hits, it won't get fried because
it won't go down, won't transmit down the power lines, etc.
Exactly, and it could be, it's not a really strong signal, but it could be strong enough that if it's connected up in certain ways, it could cause damage to certain pieces of equipment. Yeah. So even my propane tank, I'll put up a quick disconnect on the propane tank, because the propane tank itself could act as a large antenna to feed electricity, the EMP pulse, into the generator.
Oh, really?
Well, of course it could.
And you can put a power surge protector that would actually be a breaker. Then the first millisecond could break the circuit too.
And my technician will be here tomorrow. We're going to have more lengthy discussions about that kind of equipment. And as far as backups, I've got hand crank lights. I got hand crank radios. I have candles that will burn for 24 hours inside a glass jar, and so forth. So if one thing breaks down and is unusable, I've got something else to back it up.
Yeah, backups are backups. It's a good rule.
Absolutely.
And you got some updates in terms of what's going on with the airborne plagues. As I pronounced this at the beginning of the year, that 2014, early 2015, as we head through the blood moons, will be the years of plagues. And those plagues are going to bring us down hard.
Well, it looks like the MERS coronavirus, the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, MERS coronavirus, is going to be the plague. The Ebola has pretty well been stamped out, which surprises me.
No, it's too lethal. That's why
a full report there.
It's too lethal to spread to become a real deadly plague. Even with a longer incubation period, it terminates people too quickly, and they don't start shedding virus heavily until they are about to get sick. So that's what I would have expected with Ebola. The MERS coronavirus, though, has a very high case fatality rate, and it's indolent. It hangs on a long time. It spreads a lot of virus, so that has characteristics. Similarly, H7N9 from China, high case fatality rate, sheds a lot of virus, and so it can infect a lot of people before it becomes evident somebody's going to get sick or die. And so I think we're going to have beta coronavirus and H7N9 be the primary candidates for the bug that's going to hit us and shut down society for a while.
Well, we also have other avian influenzas that are rising in China, H7N8 and H7N12. So, and they are killing people.
And H5N1 is still there. Here's the thing, though. It's called recombination in mixing vessels. We already have the embedded H5N1 in every bird population on every continent except Antarctica, where there's only penguins. And I don't think there's H5N1 in those penguins.
Yes, there is. They just found it.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's everywhere. I'm now staying corrected now. It's in every continent, including Antarctica. That's bad. It's funny bad, but it's really bad.
Well, it doesn't kill the birds. The only birds
but what it is, they're a great mixing vessel. So if you've got more than one virus and it combines in those birds, they're going to create new novel superviruses. They're basically a mobile lab, bioweapons lab.
Well, that's right. In the movie Contagion, the statement is made by the epidemiologist that we don't need to turn H5N1 into a bioweapon. The birds are doing it.
Exactly, and that's what we're saying here now. I tell people, without putting dates on it, the things that are likely to happen. We went over the list on Tuesday with Tim Alexander of the 27 things that are signs that the economy is about to crash. And it's much worse in many of these characteristics in 1929 or the 2008 crash. We have stupid foreign policies that are trying to aggravate Russia. We are spending more than we get. We take in trillions of dollars, and we always manage to spend at least 1 or 2 trillion more than we actually take in. We are cutting our military. At the same time, we're soon going to have a number of states go bankrupt that can't continue paying benefits to people who basically can't work, can't find jobs, or it's multi-generational. It's basically a way of life. And if you look down this whole list and you add in the thing of us attacking or allowing Israel to attack Iran and having EMP attacks back and having airborne plagues, it's a very bad, what I call Armageddon soup. Bad soup to drink or eat. And you did some research on the coronavirus, and there's a special target that certain drugs will actually operate through, but I don't think I'm going to get cooperative doctors. We have berberine, we have, of course, our antipathogenics, Alamax, Ellison Med, Silver 100, Nutridyne, that'll kill off all pathogens, so there's no need to go to toxic drugs or drugs the doctors won't be cooperative. And they're, when you write a script, you have to have a reason for the script. And if you write a script without any reason, they can get in trouble with their insurance company, with the state medical board, etc. Especially if they have to give it on a prolonged basis, because how are you going to prevent the illness unless you take it long term?
Well, this DPP-4 connection with the MERS coronavirus is that apparently in people who have higher blood sugar level, that indicates that the DPP-4 receptors are not being utilized. And so what they want to do, the MERS coronavirus will attach there. And that's why we have people who are dying from kidney disease and also in the lungs. And so what you want is one of those drugs that will attach to the DPP-4 receptor. And so berberstatin is something that you have?
Yeah, berberstatin, but we have our antipathogenics, our Allicin Med, Silver 100, and a diatomic Tesla-activated iodine, Nutrimedical, will all kill all these pathogens very easily. So if you're just taking it constantly, let's say the Allicin Med or one capsule a day, or Alamax one capsule twice a day. Well, but they're going to kill
all the bugs in your gut.
No, it doesn't do that. No. And it doesn't infect any normal commensal probiotics. These are very bioselective nutraceuticals that kill only pathogenic bacteria and viruses and mycobacteria. It doesn't affect anything that's good for your body. Interesting, eh? Whereas you take a conventional drug, and that's why autism rates are 45% higher in children under 5 that are given antibiotics, because it knocks off the normal probiotic bacteria, and you get an overgrowth of fungi and yeast, and you get an increase in anaerobic bacteria that increases an analog of dopamine that you can measure in the urine. Dr. William Shaw discovered this at Overland Park, Kansas, Great Plains Laboratory, and presented it years ago. So the fact is that antibiotics actually will screw you up and create anaerobic bacteria that permanently get embedded in your gut, whereas our antipathogenics won't. And these drugs that they give are only bioselective for one specific pathway, and they won't kill the pathogen. They'll just tend to kind of make it have a bad day. We want to kill it.
Anyway, that's the allopathic way to treat this is with those drugs.
The allopathic doctors need to keep their fingers off because they don't know what they're doing. And as an infectious disease doctor, before we went into medicine, they don't have enough background in infectious disease intermediate metabolism, and no doctor will prescribe these drugs because they're nervous enough with the state medical board and the hospital privileges committee. They're not going to give someone long-term any of these drugs for another health condition to supposedly prevent SARS beta coronavirus, even though they themselves, the doctors, might be sneaking it if they think it might help them, if they don't know anything about our other antipathogenics. Because when the beta coronavirus comes here, you'll see doctors jumping and nurses jumping, and you won't find them in the hospital anymore. They'll be hiding. They'll be out in their camp up in the woods, or they'll be playing golf, or they'll be out riding their boat around. They're not going to be at the hospital. They're going to take off when a plague hits.
Well, yeah, I understand that. Right now, what are they dealing with? 500 contacts that they're trying to keep track of for wow. 2 weeks. Now, the incubation period is 3 weeks, so why they're only keeping track of them for 2 weeks, I don't know.
Well, that's like the old term of accidents and on purposes. I learned that in emergency more than a third of a century ago, working in a trauma emergency burn unit, that most things are not accidents, they're on purposes. When you have a 3-week incubation and you're going to monitor for 2 weeks, it's because you want to fail.
Well, yeah, but the patient, the person, the public is the one that bears the brunt of that, because a third of them are going to die.
Well, and actually, this will hit
the third are not going to recover. They're going to have kidney damage and lung damage.
Right, and of course, there's a predominance of health professionals that get very sick or died first off. So this bug is going to kill more health professionals per capita, percentage-wise, than it will kill the public.
Well, they did isolate the health professionals that came in contact with the 2 people who flew in from the Middle East who had the MERS, and they did home isolation on them, but it was voluntary, and it was not confirmed.
Yeah, that's pretty sloppy. And what do you think? Do you think the plague is going to really explode this year?
Well, yeah, John and I were talking about that on his 6 o'clock radio show today. It's a geometric progression. It's not arithmetic. So It isn't like it goes from, if you're adding 2, like it goes from 0 to 2 to 4 to 6 to 8 to 10 to 12. Instead, it'll be a multiplier effect because it's exponential. And so it'll go 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 126, 512, 1024. So, you're going from 0 to 1,000 in the same time that an arithmetic progression might go from 0 to 10.
Yeah, that's scary. And we did a simulation on a NOAA computer of a smallpox virus that was modified as a bioweapon that arrived in Oklahoma City on our simulation along with Top Off in Dark Winter in 97 with the FBI and CDC of the federal government under Reserve Admiral Choose. And what we found was that progression curve indicated that a very bad bioweapon like, the beta coronavirus, which we know is a bioweapon, would progress very rapidly and shut down a good part of the country, if not all of it, within a relatively short period of time, and it could spread to many other countries very quickly.
Yeah, the CDC has admitted that they were caught off guard by the fellow in Illinois. He was a business person. He met the fellow from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, who wasn't showing any symptoms at that time, although he was showing symptoms. He was on the contact list because he had been working with another medical worker who had died. And so they had called him, and he did complain of a little respiratory distress. But they didn't see that as part of MERS. And so they let him fly into the United States, and he met with a business person in Chicago. They spent 2 days together off and on. Longest meeting was 40 minutes, and they did stand closer than 6 feet, and they did shake hands. Well, then that person from Chicago tested positive for having the MERS.
Well, here's the thing.
Well, we thought it was spread through close contact. A business meeting does not qualify as a close contact. So I don't know what they're going to do now.
Trying to use that kind of sloppy logic with something like this. It's a live pathogen, and it has, if we want to call it, organic intelligence in its way of spreading. What I would recommend that they do is simple. Don't waste your time on thermal scans. Don't waste your time on Z-stat flu tests for the flu. You get a bioplasm NLS, tune it specifically into the frequencies of the pathogens, able to identify if anybody has the pathogen even in its nascent state in their upper airway before it multiplies the virus enough to even infect anyone else. And it'll show up the signature frequency patterns on the bioplasm. The test takes only a matter of a couple minutes if you're looking at only 1 or 2 different parameters, likely specific frequencies for the SARS beta coronavirus. And if someone's positive, they need to go into a quarantine for a month. That's how you do it. So, tongue-in-cheek, and I'm going to ask this question of John first. You were listening to me and Ann kind of doing a progression of the 5 times multiplicator effect. Right. If you actually just very roughly throw these numbers out, it tells us that by the fall we'll be dealing with millions of cases of beta coronavirus that will be jamming up hospitals, having tents outside hospitals so people can't even walk inside the emergency department, killing doctors and nurses. They'll be running to try to save their own family. And by the fall, we'll be deep into a medical martial law with an airborne plague of beta coronavirus, including our airports shut down. A lot of people are afraid to even go into public. We've seen people walk around with masks. I predict that if this number is correct, and if it multiplies the way we expect it may, beta coronavirus by the late fall or around Christmas is probably going to kill, at least affect millions of people and really jam up the healthcare system.
Right, absolutely. Well, Doctor, I've read recently that among the insiders at FEMA, the word zombie and poor people are synonyms. And that brings to mind
what?
The word zombie and poor people are synonyms.
Poor people?
Yeah,
you mean like homeless?
Homeless, poor people, barefoot peasants.
Right, okay, but by the way, when you expose somebody to cesium-137, it turns them into a zombie. It actually does a frontal lobotomy on them. Cesium-137 does. It's an analog of potassium magnesium.
This past winter I had some excess time, and I watched the first 4 seasons of The Walking Dead. I have to admit, I was shocked at how well written it was, the character development, the way the characters dealt with situations that they were faced with. But there were a number of scenes where the characters came upon what would have been a last-ditch effort on the part of the military to set up a field hospital and deal with the crisis. And of course, the field hospital was deserted with dead bodies all over the place. That sounds like the picture you just painted, Doctor, where these medical professionals, doctors and nurses, they're going to figure out pretty quick that no matter how heroic their efforts, they're going to fail. Well,
because they don't take it as rigorously. There should be UV light curtains all around the facility. It should be a tent outside the hospital. Everybody that comes into the hospital, having any symptoms even vaguely like it, should be put on an antipathogenic, because the very first thing you want to do is make sure they don't shed more virus. Because what happens is you have a super spreader walking in the hospital doors, and even if they're sent back out and say, here's your script, see you later, come back in 3 days, they're going to shed virus if they got an airborne plague. So if they were taking our Allicin Silver 100 Nutrimedical, they'll stop shedding the virus within a matter of an hour or so after they take it, and they'll start recovering in the next 3 or 4 days. If you send people out, first off, you have to scrub the air, and you should have an ozonator in the area, ultraviolet light curtains, and everywhere you should be spraying ionic silver, or Silver 100 spray, and it'll be spraying on all surfaces, clothes, ties, white coats, whatever, to make sure, and they should be resprayed every hour or so you don't transfer virus that's coughed or spread or touched inadvertently on the garments and then spread to someone else. And the problem is you don't take it seriously enough, because people don't use their imagination to visualize that the bug is everywhere and it's deadly. And it's because doctors are sloppy, they are very sloppy, and nurses, they assume because surfaces are shiny or because things smell clean that they're clean, and they're not.
Right.
Shiny and smelly does not equal clean.
Well, absolutely. And as I said a moment ago, Doctor, once these healthcare professionals figure out that all the efforts that they have at their disposal are going to fail, they're going to pick up and get out of Dodge to take care of their families.
I don't think they're going to even wait that long. I'll tell you what happened when I saw plagues like we had Staph aureus spread through the burn unit at the Foothills Hospital back in the 1979-80. And when it went through, it literally killed everybody in the unit. The nurses and doctors freaked, and they jumped. They weren't there. They had to bring in extra people. A special infectious disease unit. People were in reverse protection gowns, UV light curtains, and everything. So when the Staph aureus arrived there, they didn't use proper procedures, so it spread right through the unit and killed everybody. So I think there were 27 deaths in a matter of a week. So people don't realize this is like a military operation. It's like a special Delta force when you're dealing with an infectious disease. This is not something that you can forget one part of the whole chain of things you have to do in perfect synchrony to make sure that the bugs don't get out and win. This is not something you play around with. This is something that requires precision, just like a precision military operation. The military knows that. But yes. Doctors, you see, because most of them don't get trained into that level of expertise, except if you go into subspecialty. Maybe even in the operating room, you know that you got to do a procedure in a certain sequence, like A, B, C, D, E, and if there's this happens, you got to go to that contingency. That has to be the rigorousness of the issue. And my screening technique would use bioplasm screening, and it would then draw blood, put them in temporary quarantine, and it would release them. But they would also be on antipathogenic, so even if they're in temporary quarantine, it won't cross-contaminate other people there. Because one of the big problems, and I raised this at the Adams Park Hotel in March of 2001, before 9/11, to the director of FEMA, that if you put people into a facility like the Centennial Airport, you're guaranteed cross-contaminate, whether it's radiotoxins such as cobalt-60, or if it's a biological weapon. So, in other words, their attempt to try to fix the problem actually creates bigger problems that they can't control. So they actually guarantee cross-contamination. And you got to stop viral spread and replication in the person, because the test can be false negative, or you may be at a stage where the virus is replicating, but the patient's not sick. So you can't use the clinical signs to tell whether or not there's a problem. Even if you do a thing like a walking oximetry to see if they're desaturate, or a high-resolution CT scan, and you don't see alveolar edema, or their DLCO on their lung function test shows that they're getting an oxygen block. You can't wait for clinical signs. You have to wait. You have to see the bioplasmatic signature of the virus. And then you take measures to prevent the virus from replicating, and you put them in temporary quarantine, and then you can succeed. But all the procedures that they're currently doing right now, and I mentioned this, that every aircraft should have a chain of custody container with a HEPA filter, and it should go off to a viral and bacterial lab. They should immediately have, if it's positive, and they can do a rapid test on scan and electron microscopy. If it's positive, everybody in the aircraft should be immediately quarantined. Not waiting 3 or 4 days until they get symptoms. That's stupid. By that time, they spread it to many other people. If the virus replicates to a level where they have an inoculum coming out of their sneezes or their contact with rails or laptop havens in airports. So if you look at it systematically, it's like the people that are involved with doing this public health protection are systematically guaranteeing failure.
Well, they're trying to treat it like they could stamp it out, and you can really only stamp out something that has an incubation time of less than 5 days. This has an incubation time of 21 days.
Our military is very good with special forces and so on at cleaning out the rat's nest of weapon systems. So you don't deploy a military force that's very good at cleaning out rat's nests to be policemen so they can get blown up by IEDs. So if I was deploying the American military, this is like infectious disease to the Middle East, I would identify with all kinds of advanced technology, which we do have, exactly where all the weapon systems, including biological, are, and I'd clean the rat's nest out, and then there's nothing to spread. Same way with the virus. You have to know who's growing the virus, even in the nascent stage when they don't have enough virus to even identify a clinical change, or themselves are sick. And none of our systems do that. They need to have scalar identification technologies, and they need a backup with blood tests and immediate action. So if a screening test on a specimen within 24 hours from the aircraft chain of custody comes back positive, the entire aircraft should be put in quarantine, itself and all the people, including the pilot and the co-pilot. And if we don't take that aggressive approach, in a real airborne plague arise here, we're going to have millions dead.
Oh, we're past the philosophical stage, Doctor. It's here.
Right, and here's the problem. I mentioned these very measures after I'd worked with them, because I was appointment under Reserve Reviews in 1997. And one of the reasons why I'm glad to be retired is because I'm tired of dealing with knuckleheads and people that are malignantly stupid. And I'm not talking about just average doctors. I'm talking about specialists, government officials, FBI, CDC directors. These people, on a good day, I don't know whether they are excessively stupid or excessively evil, or they're just playing politics. But when you take an aggressive attitude like I do intellectually with any problem, and you ask tough questions, you realize they are dangerously incompetent. Dangerously incompetent. And it guarantees failure. Welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report. And, John, by the way, we do a Monday show every Monday. This Monday is going to be Memorial Day. Would you like to cover on Wednesday, and you begin to not only host it, I will be, that 1 hour I have to be away somewhere. It's something that I can't avoid. And I'd like you to kind of host, and you can decide who you want to have on as a guest. If you want to bring on one of your favorite guests, or
which hour are we talking, Doctor?
That's the third hour on Wednesday,
sure.
Which is Central Time, 4 to 5 p.m. So that's a good deal.
I noticed you asked me live on the air, so I can't wiggle out of it.
Well, that's one of the techniques I use. Well, I know you like to get on there, and also that means you don't get interrupted with Deagle having one of his rants. You actually can present it slowly and synthetically, so the people will, after the end, will actually remember the 2 or 3 important points, and then they can actually go out and do it. You know, like I listen and I say, yes, I have bought the cable pullers, and I've got the proper socks and boots now, and I'm listening to each presentation you do on prepping, and I'm not just an armchair prepper. I'm making sure that this equipment's usable and getting ready, and realizing that the proverbial is going to hit the fan shortly. I'm not setting dates, but I can tell you my checklist is getting pretty short, the number of things that has to happen before all hell breaks loose.
Right.
And as we move into a stage where the last 2 years of the term of the abominator happens, and it looks inevitable that the Republicans are going to sweep through the elections, the Democrats that are trying to get their demonic agenda through are just in a panic to do as much evil and destruction. Like I heard the latest statement is that Obama's got some kind of panel of judges that made a statement that he basically does have executive powers that allows him to prosecute war without consulting Congress. That's really scary. We now have a Caesarian transfer. This guy is no longer a member of the American Senate, in a sense. He has now become a Caesar. And, we have a late-night TV host that's not very competent. Occasionally, he's actually accidentally funny, especially if he reads a teleprompter and has good writers. But Obama really is a burnt-out bisexual prostitute who would be probably a pretty decent late-night TV host, but he does crap as a president. He doesn't have the intellectual capacity, he doesn't have the moral fiber, and he's an evil man.
Tell us what you really think.
I know. I hold it back. I hold it back. Just like the other day, we were talking about the issue of transubstantiation of the host, and I had Tim Alexander on because he was trying to defend it. But it's like when I was a kid, if you were wanting to be like an entomologist and you wanted to see how an insect works, you pull the wings off it carefully and you pull out each body part and you analyze it with your microscope. That's what I do to an issue. And he was squirming, but he couldn't get away. He was like the insect where I was pulling off the wings. Did Jesus transubstantiate the host into his body and transubstantiate the wine into his blood so the people would drink it before he went to the cross? I don't think so. So why do the bishops and the priests think that they can do that? That put an end to that, didn't it? And then I quoted, we had Dr. Ted Brower, who was a blast, right? And I had him on, and I said...
he's a lot of fun.
And I said, I said, Dr. Ted, I'm going to quote from Revelation. It might not be word for word accurate, but it's got all the basic meaning. Behold, Babylon, the great mother of harlots and of abominations on the earth. I said, what is that? And I knew what the lead answer was going to be, and he said, that's the Roman Catholic Church. I said, right on. And abominations on the earth, that means there's a lot of daughter churches that have got a lot of the pagan abominations inside the so-called Catholic Church. So I think what we need as an antidote to the dangerous stupidity in our nation is a dose of tough questions and honesty. Just like when I confronted the FBI and CDC director, March 16th, 2001, and actually told them what needed to be done to fix the problem, and they kind of chuckled at me like, hey, you actually want to fix the problem? We like living off problems. That's our life. That's the lifeblood of our bureaucracy, is to make sure that we pretend to address a problem, and then when it goes south, we just get bigger budgets and do more stuff. That's what happens.
Yeah. Then we can hire our nephew to fix it.
Then we can hire our nephew, then we can stuff money in foreign bank accounts, and then we can kind of work with the cartels, then we can whatever, And people say, no, they're not doing that. Yes, they are. That's why the American government can take in all kinds of revenue and spend $1 trillion or $2 trillion more than they actually take in every year, ballooning the debt out of existence. It's just insane. We have a bunch of evil, stupid, crazy, demonically. They don't care about the Republic. They don't care about America. They don't care about the fact that without a good America, the whole world's going to go down the toilet. America is the doorstop to Satan. If America goes, the whole world goes, period. It can't be stopped by Canada or the Netherlands or Guatemala. The only nation that can stop the New World Order is a believing, active, honest, brutally honest, and willing to live and die, as they say, join your blood to the blood of Jesus. Living Christians that actually are going to face the truth inside their churches, their political organizations, and their own life. And if they aren't honest, it says in the Bible, if they love not the truth, then I will send them a strong delusion. Let me tell you, we are living in a sea of delusions. Do you want to say some comments, John or Ann?
Go ahead, Ann.
Well, as you know, I'm a Christian, and I believe.
So am I. I'm an on fire Christian. I take God seriously. On fire. I'll die with my boots on, and no matter what way it is, blown apart, filleted alive, fried, flambéed, I'm going to serve my God until the last breath and the last drop of blood's gone.
Well, I think that we can do that through the power of the Holy Spirit.
Absolutely. In fact, without the power of the Holy Spirit, you're not capable of doing good. You are incapable of doing good. We don't have a natural nature that makes us good. It's only God that makes us good.
Are you sure you're not a Presbyterian?
I don't like to put labels. Let's put it this way. I know through the Spirit of the Most High God telling me what is good or evil, and then Shema doing it, that's the only way, the only definition of the way we can do good is to hear what God says moment to moment. The only way. We don't have a capacity for good separate from God. We don't. We have a capacity to look good, but looking good and being good is two different things.
Yeah, you don't want to get caught up in works.
Yeah.
No, that's right. You have to listen to God, and sometimes, like the pastor asked me in Sunday school the other day, or he asked the class, he says, Has God ever asked you to do something that you might find embarrassing to do in front of your friends? And I raised my hand and said yes, because God's ways are not man's ways.
Exactly, yeah. And sometimes, by the way, this is the one I told a lady who was really concerned about her son, and he was into alcohol and drugs and doing horrible things. And I said, now you're going to pray for him, and we're going to pray together. But when you release him to God, he may take his legs off him or make him blind or put him through a burn unit so he's got 80% body burns. So when you're praying for him, for God to touch him before he goes to the lake of fire, he might have to do bad stuff to him to get his attention. So when you release him to God, God's going to say, okay, I'm going to do this now. Hands off. You've been praying for him. Now I'm going to bring him to Jesus. And people don't get that. They got to be careful when they don't realize when they start asking for God to intervene, it isn't always pretty.
Be careful what you ask God for.
Yeah, exactly. Same with nations. We pray for America. We pray for revival. Revival may come after a plague kills 10 million Americans. Revival may come when America is hit with an EMP and a lot of people cannibalize other people. Revival may come to America when they realize this crazy nation of Israel decides to hit Tehran and we have a biological weapon released because we've decided to aggravate the Russians and the Iranians and Syrians. We're going to get a wake-up call here because we're not obedient to God.
Yeah, I think it's better, I used to pray to God for things, and now I just say, what do you want me to do, God? And I think that's a lot better way. It's a safer way.
What I do now is I say, God, I'm not going to ask you for anything because I know sometimes it's going to hurt. Because you ask for stuff and then he does things. So I said, I said, just tell me what I got to do today, God. That's good enough for me.
Yeah, that's where I am now too.
Yeah, you definitely get humbled because as you start walking with God, you realize even if you think you got it all figured out, you don't. It's
a day at a time.
It's embarrassing. No matter how smart you are, God's always so smart because He's already in the future before you get there.
Yeah, that's the strangest thing is I can look back over my life and I'll have like a deja vu moment and I'll say, oh, that's why that happened when I was 20 years younger, it's so that I would recognize it here.
Yeah, but it was amazing, isn't it?
It truly is amazing. Yeah, the more you open your eyes, the more you see.
Yeah, it's remarkable. Closing comments, John, for the memorial. Remember all of our fallen. That's why Memorial Weekend is. Tell us what you'd like to say to our military and other people.
This holiday dates back to the Civil War, when we remember our fallen veterans. And I encourage everybody to take a moment and think about the men and women who have sacrificed on behalf of this country. Even if the wars they fought in were not just wars, they did the right thing and they went when they were called.
Exactly.
So ponder that and keep in mind your spiritual preparation.
Absolutely. Thank you, John and Ann. Have a great Memorial Weekend. Drive carefully. Don't drink too much.